Good afternoon, football fans. Big Al here on this Tuesday, December 27th, 2022, to the Week 16 edition of the week that was, where I run down all the offensive and defensive statistics from all 16 games in Week 16 of the National Football League. At the end of this rundown, we'll update the NFL standings. Sorry. And I will give you my newest power rankings for week 17. So, with that said, let's jump right into week number 16, the week that was in the NFL. Starting off, as always, with Thursday night football between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New York Jets. Both teams came in very much alive in the AFC playoff race. Jacksonville at 6-8 and chasing down the slumping Titans in the AFC South, while the Jets came in at 7-7. Trevor Lawrence didn't play his best game, but he did just enough for the Jaguars to win this game 19-3. Jacksonville ran 62 or around 67 offensive plays, 31 passes and 36 runs, while the Jets ran 53 plays, 33 passes, and 20 runs. The Jaguars finished with 368 yards to 218 for the Jets. Now those numbers might have been updated, but that's what I had written down. 368 total yards for the Jaguars, 218 for the Jets. Passing yards, 218 for the Jaguars and 159 for the Jets. And rushing yards were 150 for the Jaguars and 59 for the Jets. Jacksonville finished with 19 first downs versus 10 for New York. On the year, the Jaguars now have 319 first downs. The Jets have 263. Jacksonville finished 7 of 15 for 46.7% on third down, while the Jets were a paltry 2 for 12 at 16.7%. New York also fell in on fourth down, finishing 1 for 4, while the Jaguars didn't have a fourth down play. One team was hit in particular with penalties, and that's the New York Jets. 9 penalties for 64 yards. Jacksonville only had 3 for 24. Time of possession is 34 minutes and 52 seconds for Jacksonville, 25 minutes and 8 seconds for New York. So the Jaguars nearly made it into ball hawk territory, and I'll tell you what a ball hawk is a little bit later. Defensively, the Jaguars records 39 tackles, 21 solo tackles, while the Jets had 48 tackles and 15 solo tackles. The Jaguar defense recorded 3 sacks, while the Jets record 1. On the season, Jacksonville now has 29 sacks, while New York has 40. Jacksonville would force 2 fumbles in this game, while the Jets forced 1. So on the season, the Jaguars forced fumbles, while the Jets have 10. Jacksonville had 7 passes defense, bringing their season total to 88, while the Jets had 3, bringing their season total to 66. Only 1 interception in this game, and that was by the Jaguar defense, their 13th of the season with 2 defensive touchdowns. And for the Jets, they remain at 12 interceptions and 1 touchdown. Closing line in this game was New York minus 2.5. Over under was 36.5. This game finished well under that as the 2 teams combined to score just 22 points. I picked the Jets 23-20 and to cover the 2.5 points, and I lost both picks. So I'm 0-1 both straight up against the spread. Our next game up brings us to Christmas. with the 5-9 Atlanta Falcons visiting the 9-5 Baltimore Ravens, who are still without Lamar Jackson. And again, no Lamar, no problem. And again, no Lamar, no problem for the Ravens as they won a defensive slugfest 17-9. The Falcons ran 66 offensive plays, 30 passes, and 33 runs, so it evened out for them. 51 offensive plays for the Ravens, 17 passes, 34 runs. Atlanta actually outgained Baltimore in this game, 327 to 299. They also outgained the Ravens through the air, 212 passing yards to 115. Well, Baltimore held the edge rushing with 184 yards for 115 for the Falcons. First downs favored Atlanta, 17 to 15. Falcons now have 288 first downs through 16 weeks. The Ravens 301. The Falcons finished 5 of 14 on third down, 35.7%, 1 of 4 on fourth down for 25%. The Ravens were 4 for 12 on third downs for 33.3%, and no fourth down plays. Atlanta was flagged 5 times for 48 yards, and they are still the least penalized team in the NFL, now with 65 total penalties in 15 games. Meanwhile, the Ravens would go on to be the least penalized team across the league in week 16. They were flagged only once for 6 yards. Time of possession was 32 minutes and 44 seconds for the Falcons and 27 minutes, 16 seconds for the Ravens. Atlanta's defense records 37 tackles, 18 solo. Ravens defense, 3 tackles and 3 solo. All 3 sacks in this game came from the Baltimore defense, which brings their season total to 45, while the Falcons stay put at 18. Each team would force a fumble in this game. For the Falcons, it's their 7th of the season. The Ravens, their 13th. And all 4 passes defensed in this game were by the Ravens, bringing them to 63, while the Falcons hold steady at 58. Neither defense recorded an interception, so Atlanta stays at 10 with 1 defensive touchdown, and the Ravens remain with 14 picks. I picked the Ravens to win 21-16, so I got the straight-up pick right. But I did take Atlanta at plus 6.5. And they ended up losing by 8 points. So I'll take the loss there. The closing line, by the way, was Baltimore minus 6.5, and the over-under at close was 35.5. And the 2 teams combined for just 26 points. So that's the Falcons and the Ravens. Our next game. Oh, and by the way, with the loss, Atlanta has been officially eliminated from playoff contention. Now we can move on to our next game. The Buffalo Bills at the Chicago Bears. Buffalo sitting at 11-3. They have a chance to lock up the AFC East title with a win or a Miami loss on Christmas Day. While the Chicago Bears have no shot at the playoffs whatsoever at 3-11 coming into this one. And this was a pretty weird game. Chicago led for a few stretches, but the Bills really got things going, especially their ground game, as they would go on to beat up the Bears by a final of 35-13. And both teams ran about the same amount of plays, 57 total plays for Buffalo, 26 passes, 31 runs. 58 total plays for Chicago, 28 passes and 30 runs. Total yards, a 2-1 edge to the Buffalo Bills, 426 to 209. Buffalo will outgain the Bears passing at 172 to 129. And a big advantage in rushing yards for Buffalo. This is a 3-1 spread here. Buffalo finished with 254 yards on the ground, while the Chicago Bears, who had the top rushing attack in the NFL entering Week 16, were held to just 80 yards at about 2.7 yards per run. Buffalo had 20 first downs in this game, while Chicago had just 11. The Bills, through 15 games, now has 349 first downs, while the Bears has 256. Bills finished 6 of 11 on third down for 54.5%. The Bears 2 for 12 for 16.7%. Buffalo had 1 fourth down play in the game and they would convert. Chicago had 4 fourth down plays and they would only convert 1 for 25%. The Bills were hard with the flags, though. They had 9 for 62 yards, where the Bears only had 2 for 15. Time of possession favored Chicago, 31 minutes and 12 seconds versus Buffalo's 28 minutes and 48 seconds. The Bills' defense records 51 tackles, 35 solo, while the Bears records 42 tackles and 24 solo. Buffalo's defense closed the game with 2 sacks. That brings them to 39. The Bears had 1 sack, putting them at 18, tied with the Falcons for the fewest sacks in the NFL. Each team would force a fumble in this game. That's 10 now for the Bills and 12 for the Bears. A lot of passes defensed in this game, 5 for the Bills and 4 for the Bears. Buffalo's season total is now at 83. Chicago is at 47. And the Bills defense would record another interception. The Bears defense would record 2 more. So now Buffalo has 14 interceptions and a defensive touchdown. The Bears, after their 2 interceptions on Saturday, brings their season total to 15. I picked Buffalo to win this game straight up 27-20. So I got the straight up pick right. I did pick Chicago to cover the points because I thought it was going to be more of a closer game, but boy, was I wrong. I lost that pick. So now 0-3 against the spread and 2-1 straight up. The closing line in this game was Buffalo -8. Over under was 40.5. And the game finished over as the 2 teams scored 48 points. Okay. Our next game up is the Cincinnati Bengals at 10-4 and leaders of the AFC North, venturing into Foxborough to face Bill Belichick and the 7-7 New England Patriots, battling for a wild card spot. And this is kind of a reverse game for the Bengals as opposed to their win over Tampa Bay. The first half, the Bengals did not play all that well. But then Cincinnati's defense came out big in the second half, forcing 4 turnovers and erasing a 17-0 lead to beat the Bucs. This week, the Bengals scored all 22 of their points before halftime. They allowed the Patriots to come back, but they held on to win this game by a final of 22-18, further damaging the Patriots' playoff aspirations. The Bengals ran 76 offensive plays, 52 passes, and 24 runs. The Patriots ran just 49 offensive plays, 33 passes, and 16 runs. Total yards were 442 for Cincinnati and 285 for New England. Passing yards favored Cincinnati huge, 369 to 224. And rushing yards, and there weren't a lot of them in this game, also favored the Bengals, 73 to 61. The Bengals ran at just over 3 yards per pop, while the Patriots ran about 3.8 per pop. First downs, nearly a 2-1 edge to Cincinnati. 28 first downs for the Bengals, 15 for the Patriots. Cincy now has 342 first downs through 16 weeks, while the Patriots have 254. Both teams did pretty well on third down. 8 of 16 for the Bengals, 50%. 6 of 13 for the Patriots, 46.2%. Each team had a fourth down play in this game. The Bengals would convert on their one fourth down play. The Patriots, however, would not convert on their fourth down play. And penalties aplenty in this one. 8 flags, 62 yards for Cincinnati. 10 penalties and 82 yards for New England. Time of possession, 36 minutes, 48 seconds for the Bengals. 23 minutes and 12 seconds for the Patriots. And this makes the Cincinnati Bengals our first ball hawks of the week. A ball hawk, if you're new here, is a team that possesses the football for at least 35 minutes in a game, whether they win the game or lose. And in the Bengals case, they would win. The Cincinnati defense had 38 tackles, 15 solo tackles. The Patriots defense would record 63 tackles, and 41 of those being solo tackles. All right, there were 6 total sacks in this game, 4 by Cincinnati, 2 by New England. The Patriots now has 49 sacks on the season. The Bengals have 29. The Bengals defense would force 2 fumbles in this game. The Patriots would force 1. Both teams have 12 on the season. 5 passes defense by the Bengals versus 3 for the Patriots. Season totals are 66 for Cincinnati, 59 for New England. The Patriots had 2 interceptions and a touchdown. So one of their interceptions went back for a score. So now the Patriots have 16 interceptions. And the pick 6 on Saturday is the 5th defensive score by New England, which ties the Arizona Cardinals for most defensive scores in the NFL. The Bengals did not record an interception, so they stay at 11. Closing line is Cincinnati -3, and the over-under is 41.5. And this game just missed that total as the 2 teams combined for 40 points. I took the Bengals to win 24-21 and to push the total. Cincinnati does cover, winning by 4. So I'm going to count this as a loss. This is a win. Never mind. So that's my first win ATS. I go to 3-1 against, or 3-1 straight up on the season. Then you got the Detroit Lions and the Carolina Panthers, both of which are alive and well in the NFC playoff picture for different reasons. The Lions, winners of 6 of their last 7, including 3 straight going into Sunday, were alive well in the NFC wildcard race. Carolina Panthers, despite their 5-9 record, were only 1 game behind Tampa Bay in the NFC South. And they got a big game coming up next weekend in Tampa, potentially for the NFC South Championship. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it later on. The Panthers came in at 5-9 in this game. The Lions 7-7. Now keep in mind, this is a Detroit team that started 1-6, but really got hot over the last few weeks, winning 6 of their last 7 games. Well, the Panthers did take them down a few pegs this week because their ground game was explosive, and that paced Carolina to a 37-23 win over the Lions, who lose for just the second time in 8 weeks. The Lions ran 59 offensive plays, 42 passes, and 17 runs, while the Panthers would run 65 plays, 22 passes, and 43 runs. Okay, total yards in this game. 570 for Carolina. Yes, you heard right, 570. That's about 8.8 yards per play versus 381 for Detroit, which was around 6.5 yards per play. All right. The Lions held the edge in passing yards. They had 336 yards, averaging an even 8 yards per pass. But the Panthers, at 250 on their 22 pass attempts, averaged around 11.4 yards per pass. Here's the reason why Carolina won this game: the ground attack. The Panthers posted a season's best 320 yards rushing, while the Lions were limited to 45. Carolina ran at about 7.4 yards per rush attempt, while the Lions were limited to about 2.6, 2.7 per rush attempt. Oh, and the 320 rushing yards are the most that the Lions have allowed in a game, I think, this season. Remember, the Detroit defense held their last 2 opponents combined to only 72 rushing yards. They held the Vikings and Jets combined to 72 rushing yards. But they give up 320 in this one. The Panthers had 30 total first downs in this game. The Lions had 22. All right, so now Detroit has 329 first downs, Carolina 245. Both teams finished at 33.3% on third downs, 4 for 12 for Detroit, 3 for 9 for Carolina. The Panthers had 1 fourth down play, which they would convert, while the Lions had 3 fourth down or first down. I can't talk, sorry. The Lions would have 3 fourth down plays, and they would convert 2 of those for 66.7%. Only 4 penalties in the game for the Lions for 30 yards, but 10 for the Carolina Panthers for 74. Time of possession, 35 minutes, 13 seconds, Carolina. 24 minutes, 47 seconds, Detroit. Now the Panthers are in ball hawk territory, albeit very, very barely. Okay. As for the Lions defense, 44 tackles, 13 solo. Panthers 39 tackles and 23 solo. 2 sacks in the entire game, and they were both by the Panthers defense, bringing them to 31. In fact, they moved ahead of the Lions in total sacks this year. Detroit remains at 30. There were no forced fumbles by either team, so the Lions remain at 13, the Panthers at 7. Only 1 pass defense by Detroit's D brings them to an even 50, while Carolina had 7, which brings their total to 57. And neither team had an interception in this one. So both teams remain with 10 interceptions. Detroit with 1 defensive touchdown. Carolina with 3 defensive touchdowns. Closing line was Detroit minus 1.5, over under 43.5. The two teams shot over that as they combined for 60 points. I did pick the Lions to win and to cover. I lost both picks, so now I'm 3-2 straight up in a very bad 1-4 ATS. Okay, our next game is the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee still leading the AFC South despite a 4-game losing streak. Despite a 3-game losing streak, rather. Looking to stop the bleeding against the NFL's worst team, the Houston Texans, who entered at 1-12-1 and on a losing streak of their own, having dropped 9 straight. Now, this game did not start on time because there is an apparent water main break inside Nissan Stadium in Nashville, and that delayed the start of the game for about, I want to say, 20-30 minutes or so. And one injury of note to report for the Tennessee Titans, as you all well know. Ryan Tannehill is out for the season. I think he had an ankle injury. And so Mac Willis is in as the starter for the Tennessee Titans. And Houston finally snaps that 9-game losing streak as they go into Music City and knock off the Titans 19-14 and keep Tennessee's cold snap going. 62 offensive plays, 32 passes, and 30 runs for the Texans. 54 plays, 23 passes, 31 runs for the Titans. Neither team cracked 300 yards of offense. Houston had 285. Tennessee had 272. Passing yards favored the Texans, 215-88. Rushing yards favored the Titans, 184-70. First downs were 16-15 for Tennessee. So the Titans now have 241 first downs. The Texans just a handful ahead of them at 246. Houston finished 5 of 14 on third downs for 35.7%, while the Titans were 4 for 12 at 33.3%. Houston had 1 fourth down play in the game they did not convert. Tennessee had 2 fourth down plays, and they would convert on 1. The Texans finished with 4 flags for 35 yards, 5 flags for the Titans for 30. Time of possession, 33 minutes and 3 seconds for Houston. 26 minutes and 57 seconds for the Tennessee Titans. The Texans defense would record 51 tackles, 31 solo, while Tennessee recorded 48 tackles, 20 solo. Houston's defense would finish with 4 sacks in the game, 1 for Tennessee. Both teams have 37 on the year. The Texans D recorded 2 forced fumbles, while the Titans had 1, pushing Houston to 12 and Tennessee to 11. Speaking of 11, we had 11 passes defensed in this game, 6 by Tennessee, bringing their total to 70, and 5 by Houston, which brings their total to 58. The Texans defense records 2 interceptions versus 1 for the Titans. Both teams now have 12 INTs. Tennessee also has a defensive score to their credit as well. Closing line in this game was Tennessee -3, and the over-under was a rather low 33.5. And they just missed that total by half a point as the two teams combined for 33 points. And here's something rather crazy. I did pick the final score of this game correctly, 19-14. Although I had Tennessee winning by that score. And I had Tennessee covering the 3 points. But Houston wins and covers, so I lost both picks. Ironic like Alanis Morissette, right? So now I'm back to 500 in my straight up picks at 3-3. My ATS record continues to struggle, sitting at 1-5. Our next game is the New Orleans Saints, who, like the Panthers, are still alive in the NFC South title race, at the Cleveland Browns, barely alive in the AFC playoff picture. New Orleans came in 5-9, Cleveland rather at 6-8. And it's the Saints that goes to the shores of Lake Erie and knocks off the Browns 17-10, officially knocking Cleveland out of playoff contention. All right, the Saints ran just 54 plays, 15 passes, and 39 runs. The Browns ran 65 plays, 31 passes, and 34 runs. Total yards are nearly split evenly by the two teams as both teams would fail to reach 300. In fact, both teams failed to reach 250 yards of offense. 249 yards for Cleveland and 244 for New Orleans. Passing yards are 125-92 for Cleveland. Rushing yards are 152-124 for the New Orleans Saints. First downs also favored the hometown Browns, 15-14. So through 15 games, the Browns have 316 first downs. The Saints have 270. Both teams would convert 7 third downs in this game. The Saints were 7 of 15 for 46.7%. The Browns were 7 for 16 for 43.8%. No fourth down plays for the Saints. We've seen a lot of that. They don't go for it on fourth down all that often. They are 3 of 9 on the season. While the Browns went for it on fourth down 3 times, only converting once for 33.3%. Not a lot of penalties on either side, just 2 flags and 15 yards for the Saints, 4 flags and 45 yards for the Browns. Time of possession is close to even, 30 minutes and 46 seconds for Cleveland, 29 minutes and 14 seconds for New Orleans. The Saints defense would record 42 tackles, just 4 of those being solo tackles. 41 total tackles for the Browns, 19 solo. The 2 sacks in the game would come from the Saints defense, so now they're up to 41 while Cleveland stays at 30. Neither team would force a fumble in this game, so they both remain at 10. 3 passes defense by New Orleans brings them to 58. 4 for Cleveland brings them to 72. And both defenses would log an interception in this game. That's now 8 on the season for the Cleveland Browns and only the 4th interception for the Saints, who entered the week with the fewest interceptions in the NFL. The closing line in this game was Cleveland minus 3.5, and the over-under was 32. Now, this was the lowest over-under total on the board this week. And this game goes under that at 27 points by the two teams. I picked the Browns to win and cover, so I lost both those picks. So now I'm 3-4 straight up and 1-6 ATS. So my against the spread record continues to struggle. Okay, next up, the 8-6-1 New York or rather the 8-5-1 New York Football Giants, fresh off of their Week 15 Sunday night win in DC against the Commanders, venturing into the Twin Cities to battle the 11-3 and NFC North champion Minnesota Vikings, currently the 2 seed in the NFC playoffs. And this was a pretty entertaining game, to say the least. Greg Joseph, who capped the biggest comeback in NFL history a week ago, hitting a 40-yard field goal in overtime to erase a 33-point deficit against the Colts. Well, he's back at it again, as he would nail a 61-yard field goal as time expires to push the Minnesota Vikings to a 27-24 win over the G-Men. So that puts Minnesota at 12-3, and 11 of Minnesota's 12 wins have come by one possession. All right, so the Giants would run 63 plays in this game, 42 passes and 21 runs, while the Vikings would run 67 plays, 48 passes, and 19 runs. New York would outgain Minnesota as far as total yards is concerned, 445 to 353. They also outpassed the Vikings 319 passing yards to 270. And they had a big edge, or a slightly big edge, in rushing yards, 126 to 83, with New York averaging an even 6 yards per rush attempt. Both teams had 23 first downs, putting the Giants at 308 and the Vikings at 336. The Vikings were relatively good on third down at 6 of 13 for 46.2%. The Giants were not that good on third down, so 3 of 11 for 27.3%. Each team had a fourth down play in this game. New York would convert on theirs. Minnesota would not convert. The Giants would finish 7 penalties with 63 yards. They would finish with 7 penalties for 63 yards. I'll get my terminology right. And the Vikings only were flagged twice for 14 yards. Time of possession winds up in favor of the Minnesota Vikings at 30 minutes and 47 seconds for the home team, 29 minutes and 13 seconds for the visiting New York Giants, who, by the way, their defense would record 45 tackles and 9 solo tackles. Minnesota's defense would record 48 tackles and 29 solo tackles. There were a total of 7 sacks in this game, 4 by the Giants, 3 by the Vikings. And both have basically the same amount of sacks. The Vikings have 36 total sacks through 15 games, 1 more than the Giants at 35. 2 forced fumbles in the game, both by Minnesota's defense, bringing them to 12. The Giants remain at 21 forced fumbles, which is still the most of any team in the NFL. Okay, 6 passes defense by the Giants brings their total to 66. 5 passes defense for Minnesota brings them to 79. And the lone interception in the game was recorded by the Vikings defense, their 13th of the season. The Giants remain at 4. So now New York is tied with New Orleans for the fewest interceptions in the league. Closing line in this game was Minnesota -4.5, and I didn't put in the over under. I'm sorry about that. I think the over under was 52. The two teams combined for 51. In fact, I can look right now and tell you what the over under is. I have my sports alerts app up on my computer. You can't see it. You can only see my voice, but I do have it up. So this is the one piece of 48.5 was the over under at close in the Giants Vikings game. 48.5. Well, they do finish over that total as the two teams combined for 51 points. I picked the Vikings to win 28-24, so I got the straight up pick right. But I took New York plus the 4.5 points. And I got that pick right as well. So now I'm 4-4 straight up. I'm back to 500 in my straight up picks, but I'm still 2 for 6 against the spread. If you're joining me late, you're watching the week that was as I run down the offensive and defensive statistics from week 16 in the NFL, and coming up later, the updated NFL standings and my week 17 power rankings. If you are new to my channel, like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. We are halfway through our week 16 recap. Now we continue on with the last of the early afternoon games on Christmas Eve, and that's the Seattle Seahawks at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Seahawks, who at one point were 6-3, has really come back to earth, losing 4 of their previous 5 games and sitting with a 7-7 record. Meanwhile, the Kansas City Chiefs, winners of the AFC West for the 7th year in a row, came in with an 11-3 record. Now, Seattle's offense had ample chances to make the game a little bit closer against the Chiefs. They just couldn't do it. And Kansas City's defense probably played one of their best games of the season here in 2022 as KC wins this one 24-10. The Seahawks would run 71 plays, 40 passes, and 31 runs, while the Chiefs were limited to 50 plays, 28 passes, and 22 runs. Total yards were 353 for Seattle, 297 for Kansas City. The Chiefs hold the slight edge in passing yards, 220 to 200. The Seahawks would hold the edge rushing, though, 133 yards to 77. And in first downs, those would favor the visitors. 19 for Seattle, 14 for Kansas City. Even with the 14 first downs, the Chiefs still have an NFL's best 365 through 15 games. The Seahawks now at 304. Both teams struggled mightily on third down. 2 of 14, 14.3% for Seattle. 3 of 11, 27.3% for KC. The Chiefs had 1 fourth down play in this game. They didn't convert. Seattle, however, had 6 fourth down plays. They would convert on half of those, half of 6 being 3. 6 penalties and 35 yards for the Seahawks. 5 penalties and 39 yards for the Chiefs. Time of possessions, 35 minutes and 2 seconds for the Seahawks, 24 minutes, 58 seconds for Kansas City. This puts Seattle just barely into ball hawk territory. Again, you must possess the ball for at least 35 minutes in a game to be considered a ball hawk, and the Seahawks did just enough to get there. Seattle's defense would record 30 tackles and 9 solo tackles. Kansas City, 47 tackles and 12 solo tackles. Okay, the Seahawks had 1 sack in the game. The Chiefs would have a pair. This moves KC's sack total to 45, the Seahawks to 35. Neither team would force a fumble in this game, keeping Seattle at 16, putting them among the league leaders, and Kansas City stays at 9. Each team had 5 passes defensed in this game. So the Seahawks now has 71, while Kansas City finished with 73. The lone interception in the game goes to the Kansas City defense. That's their 9th of the season, plus 2 defensive touchdowns, while Seattle remains at 11 interceptions and 1 defensive score. Closing line is Kansas City minus 10.5. Over under is 51. And this game came nowhere near that 51 total, as the two teams only combined for 34 points. I picked Kansas City straight up 31-26 and Seattle plus the 10.5 because I didn't trust Kansas City to cover these large spreads, but apparently this week they did. And so that's 2-7 ATS, 5-4 in my straight up picks. That brings us to the 2 late afternoon games on Christmas Eve. We'll start off with the Washington Commanders at 7-6-1, coming off that home loss last Sunday night to the Giants. Traveling west to face Brock Purdy and the 10-4 and NFC West champs, the San Francisco 49ers. That's right, the Bang Bang Niner gang. And it's the Bang Bang Niner gang who wins big in this one, as San Francisco takes down Washington 37-20 for their 6th win in the last 8 games in this series versus Washington. Now the Commanders ran more plays. They ran 67, 34 passes and 33 runs, while the Niners ran just 48 plays, 22 passes and 26 runs. Total yards were nearly even, 371 for the Niners versus 349 for the Commanders. Passing yards would favor the visitors from our nation's capital, 270-218. San Francisco would hold the edge rushing-wise, 153-79. First downs were also in favor of the boys from D.C., 21 for the Commanders, 14 for the 49ers. Washington now over 300 first downs on the season, 306 to be exact. The Niners just about there at 299. The Commanders did pretty good on third down, 7 of 13 for 53.8%. The Niners 4 of 11 for 36.4%. All right, each team had 2 fourth down plays. The Niners would convert 1 of their 2 for 50%. Washington would be turned away on both of their fourth down plays. Washington would finish with 6 penalties for 51 yards, 4 penalties, and 25 for San Francisco. Time of possession favored Washington, 33 minutes and 35 seconds. San Francisco, 26 minutes, 25 seconds. The Commanders' defense would record 37 tackles, 13 solo tackles, while the Niners would put up 52 tackles, 16 solo tackles. Washington had 3 sacks in this game, which brings their total to 36. And the 49ers had a couple of sacks, which moves them to 42. The lone forced fumble in the game was by San Fran's defense. That's their 15th fumble. Washington stays at 8. Each team had 4 passes defense, which brings the Niners total to 70 and the Commanders to 59. And both defenses logged an interception in this one. For Washington, that's 8 with a defensive touchdown. And for San Francisco, it's 15 with 3 defensive touchdowns. Closing line was San Francisco -6 over under 37, and they shot well over that at 57 points. I took the Niners to win straight up 26-20, and I took Washington to cover the 7 points, but they got shellacked, losing by 17. So the Niners got the cover there. So now my straight up record is 6-4, and my ATS record, which continues to struggle this week, is 2-8. And I don't think it's going to get any better after this next game. The Philadelphia Eagles, 13-1 on the season, at the Dallas Cowboys at 10-4. Now remember, the Eagles beat the Cowboys on a Sunday night in Philadelphia back in October with Dallas's backup quarterback Cooper Rush. This week, the Eagles had their backup quarterback Gardner Minshew playing for the injured Jalen Hurts, who again suffered a shoulder injury last week in Chicago, and his status for Week 17 against New Orleans is uncertain at this time. Well, if you were looking for defense, for the most part, you won't find it in this game because both offenses were on display, as the two teams combined for 74 points, 861 yards, and 135 offensive plays, along with 50 first downs. And at the end of the day, it's turnovers that killed the Philadelphia Eagles in this one. They would turn the ball over 4 times, including 2 critical turnovers late in the fourth quarter, which helped the Cowboys score a touchdown and a field goal, and still this one 40-34. So just the second loss of the season for the Eagles in 15 games. No big deal. Now, Philly would have clinched the NFC East title and the number 1 seed in the conference had they won this game. Now they'll have to wait another week for that. All right, as I mentioned, there were 135 total plays in this game. 69 from Philadelphia, 66 from Dallas. Philly would throw the ball 40 times, Dallas 35 times. And rushing yards or rushing attempts were about the same, 31 for the Eagles. All right, total yards, 442 for the Eagles, 419 for the Cowboys. Passing yards favored Philly, 355-304. Rushing yards would favor Dallas, 115-87. Both teams would finish with 25 first downs. So that gives the Eagles 351 through 15 games, and they would lead the NFC in terms of total downs. The Cowboys have 311, and both teams did well on third down. Philadelphia 8 of 14 for 57.1%. Dallas 8 of 15 for 53.3%. The Eagles would attempt 3 fourth down plays, convert 2 of the 3 for 66.7%, while Dallas would convert their only fourth down play of the game. All right, only 2 penalties for the Eagles for 10 yards, and this is the third straight game in which the Eagles would be flagged twice in a game since that 12 flag game against the Titans back in week 13. The Cowboys, meanwhile, they were flagged 4 times for 36. And time of possession would favor the hometown Cowboys, 32 minutes and 18 seconds. Philadelphia, 27 minutes and 42 seconds. All right. Eagles offense, or rather the Eagles defense, 53 tackles, 31 solo tackles, 42 tackles, and 23 solo tackles for the Dallas Cowboys. And the sack department was live for the Philadelphia Eagles as all 6 sacks in this game went to Philadelphia. So now they have an NFL leading 60 sacks through 15 games. Do the math. That's 4 sacks per game. The Cowboys were not able to get a pass rush on the Gardner Minshew and did not record a sack this week, so they stay at 49. That pulls them into a second place tie with New England in terms of total sacks. Each team would force a fumble in this game. For Dallas, it's their 19th of the year, second most in the NFL behind the Giants. And the Eagles, their forced fumble would be their 15th. Dallas had 4 passes defense in this game, bringing their total to 51. Philly adds another 3 in that category, pushing them to 73. Cowboys defense had 2 interceptions in the game, so they're up to 13 with a defensive touchdown. And then Philly's interception would be returned for a touchdown, and that was in the first quarter when Dak Prescott threw a ill-advised pass to Josh Sweat, and he ran it back 46 yards for the game's first touchdown. That put the Eagles out 10-0 early in that game. And for Josh Sweat, from what I understood, that was his first career interception and touchdown. So congratulations to him. So now after that pick 6, the Eagles defense have 16 interceptions and 2 defensive touchdowns, both of which were pick 6s. All right. Closing line in this game was Dallas minus 3.5. Over under was 48. The 2 teams combined for 74 points. That's 26 over the closing total. I did pick Philly to win 31-28 and to cover as the underdog at +5, but I lost both picks. So now I'm 6-5 straight up, 2-9 against the spread. So yeah, my against the spread record is just putrid this week. All right, then you got the special Saturday night game commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, which took place at the end of the 1972 AFC Divisional Playoff game between the then Oakland Raiders and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, Terry Bradshaw's pass, as I said before, he threw the ball up the middle. It was broken up by Oakland's Shaq Tatum, and out of nowhere comes Steelers running back Franco Harris to pick it off the ground and run it back for the game-winning touchdown, pushing the Steelers to a 13-7 win over the Raiders. This was on December 23rd, 1972. Now, sometime last week, the legendary Franco Harris would pass away at the age of 72. And this game was played in honor of the Steelers' great. Now, before we get into the statistics in this game, there was something rather disturbing coming out of this game. I'm not sure if you heard about this, but the NFL Network has been hyping this game up for the past couple of weeks or so. And then with the added news on the death of Franco Harris, it got hyped up even more. Now, fast forward to halftime of this game. All right. The Steelers were about to present a tribute video to Franco Harris, when Roger Goodell and his NFL Network goons over in New York City decided we're going to go to the commercial break just as that tribute was starting. And that made a lot of football fans across the country, especially Steeler fans, very irate. And I 100% understand. How are you going to tout a tribute video for one of the NFL's greatest players and then decide to cut to a commercial break, never to return until the start of the second half? I mean, what's up with that? I think it was a crap move by the NFL to pull that, knowing that there was a tribute video going on at that point. NFL Network, do better. That's all I have to say about that. As for the game itself, the Steelers would end up winning 13-10. So rest in peace, Mr. Franco Harris. You are a legend, my friend. Okay, the Raiders ran 49 offensive plays, 30 passes, and 19 runs. The Steelers ran 65 plays, 39 passes, and 26 runs. Oh, by the way, the Steelers and Raiders both came in with 6-8 records, both still alive in the AFC playoff picture. All right, total yards 350 for Pittsburgh, 201 for Vegas. Passing yards also favored the Steelers, 244 to 143. And rushing yards were 106 to 58 for the Steelers. First downs also favored the Steelers at 19 to 13. That gives Pittsburgh an even 300 first downs, while the Raiders sit at 293. Vegas would convert on half of their third down plays, 6 of 12 for 50%. Pittsburgh was 5 of 14 for 35.7. They would convert both of their fourth down plays for 100%, while Vegas did not have a fourth down play. Penalties were kept at a premium for both teams, 3 for 35 yards for the Steelers, 2 for 20 yards for the Raiders. Time of possession, 32 minutes, 39 seconds for Pittsburgh, 27 minutes, and 21 seconds for Vegas. The Raiders defense recorded 48 tackles, 22 solo tackles. Steelers defense, 36 tackles and 15 solo tackles. All 3 sacks in this game would go to the Pittsburgh defense to 32, while the Raiders stay at 25. No fumbles in this game by either defense, so that keeps the Steelers at 16 and the Raiders at 10. Pittsburgh's defense did record 7 passes defense or PDs, moving them to 74 on the season. 3 passes defense for the Raiders puts them at 45. All right, 1 interception by the Raider defense. That's their 5th with 3 defensive touchdowns. However, the Steelers defense would record 3 interceptions, pushing them to 17 on the season with the 1 defensive touchdown. And the 17 interceptions are now the most of any team in the NFL. Closing line was Pittsburgh minus 2.5. Over under was 37.5. And this game came nowhere near close to that number at 23 points. Took the Steelers to win 24-16 and to cover the 2.5, the 2.5 points. I won both picks. So now I'm 7-5 and 3-9 against the spread. So those were the games on Christmas Eve. All 11 of them. Now we've made it to the Christmas Day portion of the schedule. And the first game of the day was the Green Bay Packers and the slumping Miami Dolphins. And the beat goes on for Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins, as Tua is placed back in concussion protocol once again. That's bad. And the Packers go into Miami and knock off the Fish 26-20. All right, so the Packers would run 63 plays, 38 passes, and 25 runs. The Dolphins, meanwhile, would run just 43 plays, 25 passes, and 18 runs. Total yards favored Miami in this one, 376 to 301. Miami averaging over 8 yards per play. Passing yards also favored the Dolphins, 294 to 222, with Miami averaging nearly 12 yards per pass play. And rushing yards were a slight advantage to the Dolphins, 82 for Miami, 79 for Green Bay. So the Dolphins held the edge in rush yards, pass yards, and total yards, but first downs would favor the visiting Packers. They had 17, while the Dolphins had 15. On the season, Green Bay has 297 first downs, while Miami has 304. Both teams would struggle on third down conversions. 2 of 14 for the Pack, 14.3%. 2 of 7 for the Dolphins, 28.6%. Not much better. Fourth down plays, 1 for 1 for the Dolphins at 100%. 3 of 5 for the Packers for 60%. Green Bay finished with 5 penalties and 40 yards. Miami with 8 penalties for 62. Time of possession, 32 minutes for Green Bay, 28 minutes for Miami. All right, the Packers defense would record 35 tackles, 17 solo tackles. Dolphins defense with 50 tackles and 39 solo tackles. Both teams would finish with 2 sacks in this game, moving the Packers to 31 sacks on the season and the Dolphins to 37. 2 forced fumbles in the game, both by the Green Bay defense. They're up to 10, the Dolphins stay at 12. Each team would have 6 passes defensed, moving the Packers to 50 and the Dolphins to 59. Total interceptions in this game as well. 3 of them to the Green Bay defense, 1 for Miami. The Packers now have 14 INTs, including a defensive touchdown. The Dolphins have 8 interceptions. Okay. Closing line is Miami minus 3.5, and the over-under is at 49 points. And they just barely missed the total by a field goal, as the 2 teams combined for 46. Took the Dolphins to win 27 to 23, and to cover the points, lost both picks. 7-6 straight up, 3-10 ATS. Yeah, I really got to work on my against the spread records for next year, because this is ridiculous. The late afternoon game on Christmas Day, 2 teams going nowhere, and I mean literally nowhere. The Denver Broncos at the Los Angeles Rams, both of which sit with 4-10 records. And both of which have already been eliminated from playoff contention. Well, dare I say it, Sean McVay's squad played probably their best by far of 2022, as the Rams would just flat out blitzkrieg the Denver Broncos 51 to 14. And I'll tell you how many interceptions the Rams defense would record against Bronco quarterbacks shortly. But for now, Denver's offense ran 55 plays, 35 passes, and 20 runs. LA would run 64 plays, 28 passes, and 36 runs. Total yards, passing yards, rushing yards, and first downs would all favor the Los Angeles Rams in this one. Total yards were 388 to 323 for LA. Passing yards 230 to 219. Rush yards 158 to 104. First downs also favored Los Angeles 26 to 18. This would give the Rams 267 and the Broncos 257. LA would finish 6 of 10 on third down for 60%. Denver 3 of 10 for 30%. LA converted their 1 fourth down play, while Denver had 3 fourth downs, converting 1. The Broncos, 6 more penalties for 55 yards. This is the most penalty team in football. They now have 107 penalties through 15 games. LA only flagged 3 times for a minuscule 6 yards. Time of possession is 36 minutes and 35 seconds for the LA Rams, 23 minutes and 25 seconds for Denver. So Sean McVay's squad are ball hawks this week. Okay, now to the defenses. The Broncos would record 51 tackles, 22 solo tackles. The Rams would record 38 tackles, 9 solo tackles. All 4 sacks in this game would go to the LA defense, pushing them at 33. They're just 1 behind the Broncos. Stays put at 34. There were no fumbles forced by either team. Denver is at 15, LA at 11. All 6 passes defensed were by the Rams defense. So they are now at 52. The Broncos remain at 60. And the LA Rams defense would record 4 interceptions, 1 of which was returned for a touchdown. Again, that's 4 interceptions, 3 from Russell Wilson and 1 from Crippen. And 1 of those interceptions was returned for a touchdown. So now LA's defense has 14 interceptions and their first defense score of the season. Better than never, right? And 13 interceptions is where Denver remains. Closing line in this game was Denver -3, over under 36.5. And given the nature of this game, they would shoot that total right out the water as the 2 teams combined for 65 points, although a majority of those points were scored by the home team. I picked the Rams 20-16, and I picked them plus 2.5 points, which would later become +3. I won both picks. So now I'm 8-6 straight up, 4-10 against the spread. Oh, and before we put this game to rest, I do have to tell you that after that loss, the Denver Broncos have announced that they have fired Nathaniel Hackett as the head coach, and they did announce their interim head coach earlier today. So now the Broncos will be for another coach here in the offseason, looks like. Then you come to Sunday Night Football with the 6-8 Tampa Bay Buccaneers in front in the weak NFC South, traveling to the desert to face the 4-10 Arizona Cardinals, who were eliminated from playoff contention a week earlier. And there is news from this game as the Cardinals announced that J.J. Watt will retire at the end of this 2022 season. So there's your news from that game. All right, so this game would go into overtime. Tampa Bay would win this one by a final of 19-16. Each team would run at least 70 plays in this game. 78 in total for Tampa Bay, 48 passes and 30 runs. 73 for Arizona, 46 passes and 27 runs. Total yards are 390 to 325 in favor of the Buccaneers. Passing yards also in favor of the Bucs, 281 to 204. Slight advantage in rushing yards goes to the Arizona Cardinals, 121 to 115. First downs, 21 for Tampa, 16 for Arizona. Total on the season, 309 for the Bucs, 293 for the Redbirds. Both teams pretty much struggled on third down in this one. 6 of 17, 35.3 for Tampa Bay. 5 of 19, 26.3% for Arizona. Tampa Bay had 2 fourth down plays converted, 1. The Cardinals, meanwhile, 1 fourth down play, which they would convert. The Buccaneers would finish with 5 penalties, 30 yards. Cardinals, 6 penalties, 74 yards. Time of possession, 36 minutes, 57 seconds for the Bucs, putting them in ball hog territory. 29 minutes, 22 seconds for the Cardinals. So as far as our ball hogs of the week, the team that possessed the ball longer than anyone in football, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 36 minutes and 57 seconds. Just out the Bengals and the Rams, both of which also had time of possessions better than 36 minutes. All right, the Buccaneers defense, 52 tackles, 32 solo. And for Arizona's defense, 60 tackles and 30 solo. Tampa Bay had the lone sack in the ball game. That's their 41st of the season. The Cardinals remain at 31. Tampa Bay also forced the lone fumble in this game, putting both teams at 12. In fact, it puts Tampa at 12 and keeps Arizona at 12. But there were a lot of passes defense in this game, 11 in total. 7 by the Cardinals, 4 by the Buccaneers. Arizona now has 72 passes defense, while Tampa has 52. Cardinals defense will record 2 more interceptions, putting them at 11 on the season, and 5 defensive touchdowns, which is now tied with the New England Patriots for the most in the NFL. While Tampa Bay remains at 8 interceptions and 1 defensive touchdown. Closing line was Tampa Bay minus 7.5 over under 41.5. Nearly got there though, as the two teams combined for 35 points. I picked the Bucs to win in a rather lopsided game, 26-13, and the cover 9.5. But this game ends up going to overtime. Tampa Bay does win straight up, but they did not cover 9.5 points, as this game did go into overtime. So with that, Arizona gets the cover, and I lost the ATS pick. That's been pretty much the theme this week, as I'm now 4-11 ATS, but 9-6 straight up. The final game of the week before we update the NFL standings and unveil my Week 17 power rankings is Monday Night Football, with the 8 Los Angeles Chargers visiting the 4-9-1 Indianapolis Colts, who have been in a funk recently, having lost 4 straight games. Again, my hand getting in the way of the camera. Sorry about that. Well, now you can make it 5 straight, as the Colts are bounced from playoff contention after their 20-3 home loss to Justin Herbert's Chargers. LA would run 63 plays, 31 passes, 32 runs. Indianapolis, 43 plays, 29 passes, 14 runs. Total yards, 314 for the Chargers, 173 for the Colts. That's it, 173. That's about 4 yards per play by the Indianapolis offense. Passing yards, 213 to 104 for the Chargers. And rushing yards also favored Los Angeles, 101 to 69. First downs also advantage LA. 17 for the Chargers, just 10 for the Colts. While one team did pretty well on third down, the other team did literally nothing on third down. The Chargers were 8 for 18 on third downs for 44.4%. And this is the big reason why Indianapolis lost this game. They were 0 for 10 on third downs tonight or last night. 0 for 10. Now, I think this is the second time that a team has failed to convert a third down play this season. Because I remember the Miami Dolphins were held to 0 for 7 on third downs in a loss to the 49ers earlier this year. The Colts were 0 for 10 Monday night against the Chargers on third down. All right, the Chargers had one fourth down play, which they would convert. The Colts had 4 fourth down plays, and they only converted 1. So they were a collective 1 for 14 in late down situations. That's not good. 1 for 14 on late downs. That's 7.1% if you're doing the math. 6 penalties, 60 yards for the Chargers. 2 penalties, 11 yards for the Colts. Time of possessions, 33 minutes, 54 seconds for LA. 26 minutes and 6 seconds for Indy. Chargers defense would record 33 tackles, 8 solo. Colts defense, 45 tackles, 9 solo. There were 11 total sacks in this game, 7 by the Chargers, which brings them to 35. The other 4 went to Indianapolis, bringing them to 43. The home team would force the only fumble of the game. That's 11 now for Indy, while the Chargers stay at 13. 5 passes defense for the Bolts, bringing them to 57. 2 for Indy brings them to 55. And 4 total interceptions. 3 by the Chargers defense, 1 by the Colts. So the 3 INTs for the Chargers pushes them to 13. The 1 INT by the Colts moves them to 8, and each with a defensive touchdown. So we are done with all of that. Okay, closing line was LA minus 3.5, over under 44.5, and this game finished nowhere near that number at 23 points. I did pick the Chargers to win 27-17 and to cover 4.5 initially, now 3.5. And they win this game by 17, so I got both picks right. So for week 16, I would finish 10-6 straight up. But I'm really going to have to work on my picks against the spread next week because 5-11 just won't cut it. Okay, so that's the recap of all 16 games this week. Now we're going to update the NFL standings, starting off with the AFC. And in the North Division, the Cincinnati Bengals, winners of 7 straight, sit with an 11-4 record. They've clinched a playoff spot this week, as did the Baltimore Ravens at 10-5. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who held off the Raiders on Saturday night, still alive in the race at 7-8. And then in last place, you've got the Cleveland Browns at 6-9. They're officially eliminated from the playoffs. All right. The AFC East won by the Buffalo Bills, 12-3. They've won 6 straight. And that sets up next Monday night's tilt in the Queen City with the Bills and Bengals. That should be a fun watch. The Miami Dolphins still sitting in second place at 8-7 despite a 4-game losing streak. The Patriots and Jets are both 7-8. New England's lost 2 straight. New York has lost 4 straight. And the Patriots have swept the Jets in their season series. That's why they're above New York in the standings. All right, the Jacksonville Jaguars, winners of 3 straight, has caught the Tennessee Titans atop the AFC South Both teams at 7-8. Jacksonville again won 3 straight, while Tennessee is in free fall mode, losers of 5 straight. Also, losers of 5 straight are the Indianapolis Colts at 4-10-1. They were officially eliminated from the playoffs last night. And the Houston Texans also eliminated from the playoffs. They are 2-10-1. I'm trying to look at who the Texans beat. All right, give me just a second. All right, week 6. Okay, they beat Jacksonville back in week 5. Then they went on a 9-game losing streak, which was snapped this week by beating the Titans. So now the Texans are 2-12-1. And then you got the AFC West, the Kansas City Chiefs, the champs of this division at 12-3. And then you've got the now playoff-bound Los Angeles Chargers at 9-6. Both teams have won 3 straight games. The Las Vegas Raiders took a loss in Pittsburgh on Saturday, but at 6-9, they're still mathematically alive for the playoffs. And then the Denver Broncos, who got bombed by the Rams on Christmas Day and then fired Nathaniel Hackett yesterday as head coach, sit in the basement of the West with a 4-11 record. Now to the NFC, and we'll start with the North. The Minnesota Vikings are at 12-3, winners of the division. And then you've got a tie for second place with the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers, both at 7-8. The Packers have won 3 in a row, while the Lions lost for just the second time in 8 games this past week against the Panthers. The Chicago Bears at 3-12, now owners of the NFL's longest active losing streak at 8 straight. They're eliminated from the playoffs. Okay, NFC East, the Philadelphia Eagles, still the top seed in the NFC and the best record in the league at 13-2, despite the loss Saturday to the Dallas Cowboys, who are now 11-4, both of which are going to the playoffs. The New York Giants had a golden opportunity to clinch a playoff berth this week, but lost. So they're now 8-6-1. The Washington Commanders are at 7-7-1. They also lost. But both are still very much alive for playoff spots. Then you head to the NFC South, where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers keep their 1-game lead in the division at 7-8. Both the Carolina Panthers and New Orleans Saints are 6-9, with New Orleans winners of 2 straight. And then the Atlanta Falcons at 5-10, losers of 4 straight. They were officially eliminated from contention on Saturday with their loss to the Ravens. And finally, you've got the NFC West, with the 11-4 division champs, the San Francisco 49ers, with the longest current win streak in the league at 8 in a row. Then it's the Seattle Seahawks, a very distant second at 7-8. They have now lost 3 straight and 5 of their last 6. And then both the LA Rams and Arizona Cardinals are eliminated from contention. LA is 5-10. Arizona's 4-11, and the Redbirds have lost 5 in a row. And with that, we come to our final piece of business this afternoon, or this evening, depends on wherever you're watching. And that's my Week 17 Power Rankings. Now, it took me about an hour and a half to determine this week's rankings. I mean, the top 9 I had pretty much set. Well, it was a question of who do I rank 10th? But with that said, let's take a look at the Week 17 Power Rankings. Number 32, despite snapping that 9-game win streak, is the Houston Texans. They stay in the same spot. Number 31 is the Chicago Bears, down from 30. Number 30 is the Indianapolis Colts, down from 28. Number 29 is the Denver Broncos, down from 27. Number 28 is the Arizona Cardinals, up from 29, that's losing on Sunday. Number 27, the Los Angeles Rams, down from 31, or up from 31, I should say. Number 26 is the Atlanta Falcons, down from 24. Number 25, the Las Vegas Raiders, down from 18. Number 24 is the New Orleans Saints, up from 26. Number 23 is the Cleveland Browns, same spot as last week. Number 22, the Carolina Panthers, up from 25. Number 21, the Tennessee Titans, down from 19. Number 20 is the New York Jets, same spot as last week. Number 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, up from 22. Number 18, the Seattle Seahawks, down from 15. Number 17 is the New England Patriots, down from 14. Number 16, and tied for the biggest jump in the power rankings this week, are the Green Bay Packers, up from 21. Number 15 is the Miami Dolphins, down from 13. Number 14 is the Washington Commanders, down from 10. Number 13 is the Pittsburgh Steelers, up from 16. And the other team that's tied with Green Bay for the biggest jump this week in the power rankings are the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 12, up from 17. Number 11 is the Detroit Lions, down from 9. Number 10 is the New York Giants, same spot as last week. Number 9 is the LA Chargers, up from 12. Number 8 is the Baltimore Ravens, same spot as last week. Number 7 is the Minnesota Vikings, down from 6 despite the win over the Giants. Number 6, the Dallas Cowboys, up from 7. Number 5, the Kansas City Chiefs. And number 4, the Cincinnati Bengals, both in the same spots as last week. Number 3 is the Philadelphia Eagles, down from number 1. Number 2 is the Buffalo Bills, up from number 3. And this week's new number 1 is the San Francisco 49ers, up from number 2. And that was week number 16 of the week that was, as I ran down all the offensive and defensive statistical numbers from all 16 games in week number 16 in the NFL. Okay. I will be in info gathering mode tomorrow as we start off week number 17. And then I will be back live on Thursday with my picks, plus the Sunday afternoon maps for every game, the announcers for every game, and the updated playoff races and potential clinching scenarios for teams in the NFL playoff hunt. So join me Thursday for that. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel and ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and enjoy the pigskin. Peace out.